G'day guys! The team over at the World Team Championships have recently released a new addendum to their rules set that governs the way that charging units interact with ruined terrain pieces. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through this, we're going to do some practical examples where we're going to show models moving and how this new rules interaction works and why it is such a fantastic new rule brought to you by the World Team Championships. So with that being said, let's get stuck into the video.
One for the blood god.
All right, before we get some models out on the table and run through these examples, I just want to give you a little bit of information on the World Team Championships for those of you who are unfamiliar. So it's essentially where each nation puts together a team of 8 players and then compete in a nation v nation teams event for Warhammer 40k. They do other game systems as well, like Age of Sigmar and Kill Team, but the Warhammer 40k component is the part that I'm so passionate about because it's kind of like the Warhammer 40k Olympics. Every nation gets together and you get to have games against people that you would completely never see in any other scenario, so it's an absolutely fantastic environment. And the team at the WTC put on a fantastic show. They've got a full judging staff that manage all of the rules questions that you might have, as well as put out a detailed FAQ document which picks up any of the areas that GW have missed in their FAQs and also corrects for some things that GW have overlooked, such as the complexity of charging something that's on the other side of a ruined wall. So if you want more information on that, check out the WTC website. Just Google WTC 40k and you'll get all the information you need. And with that being said, let's get into some practical examples, shall we? Alrighty guys, before we get into the example of the way that this new rule works, I just want to show you the way that it works in the core rules, just to highlight the challenge that is actually being addressed by this rules update. So let's say you're versing a Necrons player and they've got this unit of warriors. What they can do is they can deploy them behind this wall in such a way that they are not within 1 inch of the wall, but they are within, say, 2 inches of the wall, right? So there's a gap between the base of the model and the wall that is greater than 1 inch, but less than 2 inches, right? So if we deploy these Necron warriors in here like this, right? Now the problem is going to be that if you then have this unit of 8 bound over here, like so, and those 8 bound want to charge those Necron warriors and rip them to shreds, the challenge is that they can't, if they end the charge move on this side of the wall, they're not within 1 inch, and therefore they're not within engagement range and the charge fails. However, there's not enough room on this side of the wall because their bases are more or less 2 inches and the Necron player has left less than 2 inches. Which means they can't fit on this side, and if they're on that side, they're not within engagement range and therefore not eligible to fight, and the charge fails. So this creates a situation where a savvy player can deploy their Necron warrior unit in such a way that these 8 bound would need to charge all the way around the ruin, which is a problem. So one of the ways that WTC in the past have fixed this is to say that those 8 bound, because they are infantry, can essentially treat themselves as if they are partially in that wall. So even though they can't be physically placed because there is a wall physically blocking where they would be placed, you basically just place them on one side of the wall and they are treated as if they are on this side of the wall and therefore within engagement range and everything is fine. The problem with that is it required TO intervention. A tournament organizer had to come along and make sure that that was done in a fair and cooperative way. And it also made some just interesting interactions when it comes to consolidates and pile-ins and other interactions. It was a bit clunky, and as a result, they've decided to revise it and update it. And I think this new update is really, really elegant. What they've essentially done is they've said that if your regular charge move would result in you not being able to place models due to the terrain being in the way, you can use the fuel pipelines and barricades rules from the core rulebook. So it's worth noting that this only kicks in if you can't physically place the models. So if that terrain piece was not there, these 8 bound would need a 6 inch charge, right? To be able to make it in. Now, what you basically do is you roll your dice and you go, cool, we just rolled a perfect 6. So what you could do is you could go, okay, cool, I can't make it can't be physically placed there, and there's nowhere with a 6-inch move that would fulfill a normal legal move. But because that is the terrain blocking that charge, that's when this new rule kicks in. And basically the way that this rule works is any model that you're planning to move in such a way to use the fuel pipelines and barricades rule, you place a token next to, and then you move your models one by one. Any that can make a legal move using a normal rules must do so, but any that can't make it, such as these guys here, can use the barricades rule. You put a token next to each one, and then basically they get to move in and are treated as having a 2-inch engagement range, which now means that these guys are within 2 inches, which means you are able to strike those Necrons. If those Necrons were further back from the wall, you would have just been able to jump over the wall. If they were closer, you would have been able to just fight through the wall. So this basically just prevents that awkward situation where there's between 1 and 2 inches of space that you can't occupy. So for this charge, we basically just moved them all forward. They're 6 inches. They all have a token next to them, which represents that they are using this rule. And the reason that the token is important is because now that Necron player also gets to use the fuel and barricade rules, but only against the models that have a token. So for example, if you wanted to, you could have had these 3 guys like this, wherever they were, somewhere over here. You make your 6-inch charge, and you could say, you know what, I only want one of them to come in. I want this guy to come in. He's going to use the pipeline rules so that he's got the 2-inch coherency. And these 2 guys are actually just going to move over this way, right? They have to end closer to the target because it was a charge, but that's the only condition that is required. Because they were not able to make it in base contact or not able to make it within regular engagement range, they merely need to end closer. So now we've done that and only put the token on this one guy, which now means when these Necrons go to pile in, let's say that they interrupted, maybe you've got multiple combats happening, these Necrons interrupt, they will only get within engagement range of this one guy. Whereas previously, if you strung out, these Necron warriors back here would be able to pile in and get within engagement range of these 2 dudes here. So then if the Necrons pile in, you know, you're able to sort of limit their combat threat. Not that you're worried about Necron warriors in combat, but just as an example. So just a couple more examples for you. Let's say the unit is more across this way, right? And you roll your charge. Let's say you roll that's an 11-inch charge, right? So that's probably a pretty good example because based on that, this guy here can definitely end within engagement range normally, following the normal rules with that Necron warrior. This guy over here can't end within engagement range of this guy. He obviously can't go all the way around this way, and he can't fit through the wall there. So now with this guy, you'd be able to go, cool, I'm going to use a token. I'm going to use this new pipeline rule, and I'm just going to throw him in here. And same with this guy. So in this example, because this 8-bound up the front here was able to make it using the normal rules, he must do so. And it's only these 2 that are able to use the pipeline rule. So that's what the tokens are for. And then when it comes to consolidating and all of those sorts of things, it effectively functions the same. Now, it's worth noting, go to the WTC website and get the document that has all this rule broken down because it's a lot of detail in there. There's a lot of fringe cases. So for example, it's only infantry and beast models that are able to do this. Things like St. Catherine, even though she is an infantry model, her base is so big that this rule doesn't really work for her. There's a few examples there that are laid out in the document, which is on the WTC website. So make sure you check that out. They also have, I think, 6 different photo evidence examples where it shows you models, it shows you movement, it shows you sequencing, it shows you all of the information. I just wanted to do a brief video to give you guys some practical examples of the way that this is going to take effect. Sometimes you're going to be able to use this on every model in the unit, like what we did on the first example where all 3 of them ended on the other side of the wall. Other times you are going to have situations where models have to go all the way around. Another example could be if we have these guys back here, right? But the Necron player hasn't deployed this guy in the middle, right? So now when you roll your charge and you roll a 5, this guy would actually be able to be placed in here. Oh, knocked the train. He can be placed in here, but because he's gone in there, there's no room for his friends to fit in there with him. So then they would take a token each and they would move in and use the 2-inch engagement rules. So the core thing to remember is that if you can make the charge without using this rule, you must do so, and you must move those models into your regular base contact engagement range. But if there is a wall specifically that is preventing you from being able to do that, then you can opt to use this token. The other thing is obviously it's not a mandatory rule. So if you were here and say there was an objective marker over here, and you wanted to get on that objective marker, you could go, okay, cool, I'm further back than the objective, I've moved over to here, I'm gonna do my charge, cool, I rolled a nice big 8, so that means that this guy here is able to get within engagement range, so he's gonna use this rule to get there, within 2 inches of one of those Necron warriors. These two guys, now the only rule is that they must end closer to the target, and therefore they could move like so, and now I've got my 8 bound onto that objective marker. That is still a perfectly legal move. However, because you didn't use these tokens in the movement phase, in the charge phase, when you were moving your models, you now can't make attacks with those models because they don't have that 2-inch engagement range. In order to be able to do that, you need to put tokens on them, and then they now must end within engagement range. So you've got to choose during the charge step, and that means that if your opponent was to try to maybe pile in, say they interrupted you, and they piled in with all these Necron warriors and attacked your 8 bound, you would only get to fight back with this front one. Even if you did make pile-in moves like so, you would still not be able to attack those guys with these two because they didn't opt to use the barricades and pipelines rules during the charge phase, and therefore they have a standard 1-inch engagement range, which means they're not going to be able to fight the guys that are on the other side of that wall. So that's essentially the way it works. But make sure to head over to the WTC website and get that document in your hands and start having a play around with it yourself. I've only had a few reps of playing with this, and so far it seems to be quite an elegant solution to the challenges that come with the charge phase. So hope you guys enjoyed that video. I know it was a nice short one today, but it's a really exciting rule that's come across, and I wanted to share that with you guys. And let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think this is a good solution to the charging rules in 10th edition? Do you think that there are other solutions? Do you prefer the previous WTC ruling? Do you think this is too complex with requiring tokens and that sort of stuff? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.
Do your objective markers ever get lost behind terrain or other models and become difficult to see? Do they ever get bumped and accidentally moved during a game? And do they ever spark arguments about distances? Well, not anymore. Introducing the blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers. Made from the same material as astronaut suits, or maybe military equipment, or probably neither of those things, this 2mm thick neoprene synthetic rubber is tear resistant, water resistant, and is designed to last. But that's not all. The blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers come in a variety of different designs and styles to suit any faction represented in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These objective markers are a perfect gift for yourself or a friend, and are a perfect way to flex and show your opponent that not only are you a smarter, cooler, and better 40k player than them, but you also have more disposable income than they do. For the low price of $25, you'll get not 1, not 2, but 6 neoprene objective markers perfectly designed for
10th
10th edition Warhammer 40k. Follow the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.